Dr. Marcus Hale had grown used to silence. The deep hum of the research station's life support systems was the only company he had most nights. Outside, the wide observation window stretched the empty beauty of space, where a dying star flickered, like a fading lantern in the dark. He had been here for 7 months, cataloging lost human myths and forgotten fragments of alien history. It was lonely work, but Marcus never minded. He had always been the kind of man who found comfort in books, archives, and mysteries that others overlooked. Still, the silence could feel heavy sometimes. He often spoke to himself as he read old digital manuscripts, not because he expected an answer, but because the sound of his own voice reminded him that he was alive. He kept a small collection of earth trinkets on his desk, an old chess piece, a cracked pocket watch, and a faded photograph of his grandmother smiling in front of a wheat field. Those small objects grounded him, reminders that he was part of something larger, something human. That night began like many others. Marcus sat, with his tablet, scrolling through ancient records about forgotten tribes who believed in destiny written in the stars. He rubbed his tired eyes and leaned back in his chair, letting out a sigh. Fate, he muttered. Humans have always wanted to believe someone was guiding them. The lights in the room flickered. He frowned. The station's power grid was reliable. Too reliable for glitches. He stood, adjusted his glasses, and glanced at the door. A soft hiss broke the silence. The door slid open. Marcus froze. He had locked that door. A figure stepped inside slowly, with movements that were graceful, yet deliberate. At first glance, she seemed human, a tall woman with long dark hair that shimmered like strands of starlight. Her skin carried a faint glow as though light lived beneath it, and her eyes were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. They were deep and endless, galaxies spinning in miniature, colors shifting with every heartbeat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Marcus felt his chest tighten as though he had forgotten how to breathe. She looked at him with such certainty, as if she had been expecting him all along. And then she smiled. Not just any smile, a smile filled with recognition, like someone finding a long-lost friend. It was fate, she said softly, her voice carrying warmth that touched him more deeply than the cold hum of the station ever could. Marcus's throat went dry. Who are you? How did you get in here? She tilted her head slightly, the smile never leaving her lips. You already know, Marcus. The way she said his name sent shivers down his spine. He took a cautious step back, his hand brushing against the edge of his desk. No, he whispered. I don't know you. I've never seen you before in my life. Her gaze didn't waver. Not in this life, no. Something about her calmness unnerved him more than anger or hostility ever could. His training as a historian made him curious, but the logical part of his mind screamed danger. She shouldn't be here. No shuttle had docked. No signal had announced a visitor. The station was isolated, meant to keep outsiders away. And yet, here she was, speaking his name like it belonged to her. Marcus forced himself to steady his voice. If you don't tell me who you are, I'll call security. There is no need, she replied gently. I am not your enemy. Her words were simple, but the way she spoke them carried a weight that felt older than language itself. Marcus hesitated. Something deep inside told him she was telling the truth. She hadn't moved toward him, hadn't threatened him. Instead, she stood as though waiting, for him, for his choice. Finally, Marcus gathered enough courage to ask, Then why are you here? She stepped closer, her movement slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Her eyes caught the light of the dying star outside, scattering it into colors across the walls of the room. Because humanity has reached a moment, she said, her voice low but steady. A moment where your future will be written, and I cannot let you face it blind. Marcus's heart raced. He felt caught between wonder and fear. He wanted to demand answers, to ask if she was an alien, a hallucination, or something else entirely. But instead, What came out of his mouth was softer, almost childlike. Why me? She looked at him with a tenderness that made him feel both small and infinite at the same time. Because you listen. Because you search for truths when others turn away. Because you remember. Marcus blinked. He thought of the myths he had been studying only minutes before. Stories of destiny. Of humans chosen by forces greater than themselves. He had always dismissed them as symbolic, as the way ancient people made sense of chaos. Yet here stood a woman, radiant and impossible, speaking of fate as though it were real. The silence between them stretched until Marcus couldn't stand it any longer. He gestured weakly at the observation window, toward the star outside. Are you saying you're not human? Her smile softened. I walk among many species, but no, I'm not like you. That admission should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with a strange electric calm. She was different, yes, but not hostile. She was a mystery, one that called to the very heart of his curiosity. She continued, her voice carrying the weight of hidden centuries. I am a Lyra, a keeper of civilizations. I record their rises and their falls. I have walked through the ashes of empires greater than your kind, and I have seen species vanish like smoke in the wind. Yet humanity... She paused, her gaze sharpening. Humanity refuses to fade. You stumble, you suffer, but you rise again, always you rise. Marcus swallowed hard, his mind spinning. This was impossible. A stranger claiming to be some eternal observer of civilizations. It sounded like something from the very myths he studied. And yet, standing in front of him, she didn't feel like a lie. You don't make sense, he whispered. Perhaps not yet, she admitted. But you will understand. You were chosen not by me, but by what you are. Humanity is at the edge of a truth even I do not fully see. I need your help to uncover it. Marcus felt his knees weaken. My help? I'm just a historian. Elira's eyes softened again, galaxies turning gently within them. A historian sees what others ignore. You gather the broken pieces, you remember the forgotten. That is what humanity needs now. For a moment, Marcus wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. He was no soldier, no leader, just a man surrounded by books and digital files. But, deep inside, something stirred. A spark of belief, fragile yet undeniable. Elira took one final step forward, her presence filling the small room with warmth. I have been waiting for you, Marcus. Humanity has a role to play in the fate of the stars, and you are the one who will begin the telling. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He realized he had crossed a threshold, one from which he could never return. The quiet life of a lonely historian was over. Outside, the dying star pulsed once, casting long shadows across the room. Marcus met Elira's gaze, and for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of destiny settle on his shoulders. And then, the door sealed shut behind her. The next morning, Marcus Hale woke with a strange heaviness in his chest. He sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the floor, replaying the events of the night. Had it been real? Had someone truly walked into his room? Someone not human? Someone who smiled at him as though destiny itself had opened the door? He rubbed his face with both hands. It was a dream, he whispered to himself. Just stress. Too many late nights with old myths and coffee that taste like recycled rust. But when he looked at the desk, he froze. The photograph of his grandmother was no longer where he had left it. It sat carefully upright as if someone had held it, studied it, and then placed it back with deliberate care. It was not a dream. The air in the room felt different too. Not wrong, but alive, as if the station itself now carried a heartbeat. Marcus's mind raced. He was a historian, a man who studied the past, not a soldier or a leader. If Elira was real, if she was what she claimed to be, then why him? He dressed quickly and made his way down the narrow corridor to the archive chamber. The walls hummed with the steady pulse of the station systems. Everything looked the same, yet Marcus felt as though the world around him had shifted overnight. When the chamber door opened, he wasn't surprised to see her. Elira stood there, hands folded calmly behind her back, gazing at the long shelves of holographic records. The glow from the star outside painted her skin with warm light. She looked perfectly at home among the fragments of civilizations, as though she belonged to every one of them. Marcus stepped inside slowly. "You're still here." She turned, her eyes lighting with a soft recognition. "Of course, did you think I would vanish like a dream?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I hoped I had imagined it." Elira smiled faintly. "Humans often hope their miracles are dreams. It makes the truth less frightening." Marcus's heart thudded in his chest. He tried to steady his breathing. "You called yourself a keeper. Last night I wasn't sure if I heard you right." "You heard me correctly," she said. "I am a keeper of forgotten things. I walk among stars and collect the stories of those who came before. Civilizations rise, burn bright, and then fall into silence. Their memories would be lost if not for us." Marcus frowned. "Us? So there are more like you?" She nodded. "A few, not many. We do not rule. We do not conquer. We only remember. But She paused, her eyes softening. "I chose to watch humanity more closely, because you are different." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Marcus folded his arms, almost defensively. Differ. Marcus Hale had always believed history was a safe study. Records and stories never threatened him. They sat quietly in files, waiting for someone patient enough to read them. But after Elira's arrival, history no longer felt safe. It felt alive. It pressed on him, whispering that the past was not finished, that it still had power over the present. He tried to tell himself he was imagining things, but it became impossible to ignore the change. Since Elira had revealed the holographic map of a dead civilization, he saw everything differently. Each archive no longer looked like dusty fragments. Instead, they looked like pieces of a puzzle, pieces that, if joined, might reveal something greater than he had ever dreamed. But dreams had consequences. For the next 2 days, Marcus worked with Elira inside the archive chamber. She guided him to hidden files buried deep in the database, layers of information locked beneath encryption even the station's systems could not normally reach. Whenever Marcus asked how she knew they were there, she would only smile and say, "Because I have walked these paths before." The files were strange. Many came from civilizations Marcus had never heard of, names erased from public knowledge. The scripts were alien, some twisted, some elegant, some written in patterns that resembled music more than words. Marcus struggled to keep up, but Elira was patient. She helped him recognize repeating symbols, showed him how to cross-reference one language with another, and gently reminded him when he grew frustrated. On the 3rd night, they found something different. It was a fragmentary record, its code older than any other. Marcus activated it, and the holographic projection flickered uncertainly, showing incomplete images. Alien structures rose and fell, cities gleaming with towers of crystal and light. Then, chaos. Fires, crumbling walls, and empty ruins. Finally, the projection stabilized, revealing a single block of text surrounded by ancient symbols. Marcus leaned closer. His heart pounded. The script looked familiar. Not exactly human, but close enough that he could almost read it. He adjusted the filters, and slowly the words revealed themselves. The fragile ones should not endure. Their bodies break. Their lifespans are short. Their worlds unstable. And yet they do not fade. They rise when others fall. They are the anomaly. Marcus felt his skin crawl. This is talking about us. About humans. Elira's gaze sharpened, her voice low. Yes, the ones who wrote this lived before your kind even took its first steps among the stars. And already they had noticed you. Marcus shook his head. That's impossible. Humanity was nothing back then. We were barely climbing out of caves when most of these civilizations were alive. Perhaps, Elira said. But there are many ways to watch a species. Seeds are often seen before the tree grows tall. Marcus read the line again, his stomach twisting. The fragile ones should not endure. An anomaly. He thought of Earth, of how humans were weaker than many animals, how their bones broke, how their lives burned short compared to trees or mountains. Yet here they were, spread across the stars, still surviving where others had not. His voice trembled. Why would they care? Why would an ancient empire look at us at all? Elira's expression grew unreadable. Because they feared you. Words struck him harder than any blow. Marcus turned sharply toward her. Feared? We're not dangerous, we're small, fragile, insignificant compared to everything out there. Her eyes glimmered with starlight. That is what makes you dangerous. You are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced, but you refuse to end. Even when all reason says you should vanish, you continue. That is not natural to the order most civilizations accept. To them it is frightening. Marcus sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. He wanted to deny it. To laugh it off, but he couldn't. History itself supported her words. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters, and yet it always found a way forward. Empires fell, but people rebuilt. So what does this mean? He asked quietly. Are we really some kind of a mistake? Elira shook her head slowly. Not a mistake. An exception. Something the universe did not expect. Something even I do not fully understand. Her honesty unsettled him more than if she had claimed certainty. If someone as old and knowing as Elira admitted confusion, then the truth must be vast, bigger than either of them. They spent hours examining the fragment, trying to uncover more. The file contained not only the description of humanity, but warnings. Warnings written in many languages as if copied and passed through generations of alien scholars. Some passages spoke of the flame, a force carried by humans. Others argued it was not a force at all, but a flaw that would one day disrupt the balance of the galaxy. Marcus kept returning to one phrase. They rise when others fall. By the time he shut down the projection, his hands were trembling. He turned to Elira, his voice barely above a whisper. Why are you showing me this? Why not hide it if it scares others so much? Elira stepped closer, her presence calm but heavy with meaning. Because the time for hiding is ending. Sooner than you think others will come. They already suspect the truth, and when they arrive, humanity will need to know what it is and what it means. Marcus stared at her, his chest tight. What do you want me to do? I'm just one man. She looked at him with a depth that made him feel both fragile and strong at the same time. One man can remember. One man can tell a story. That is how it begins. Marcus wanted to argue, to insist he wasn't enough. But then the station's silence was broken by a sharp alarm. Red lights flared along the ceiling. A voice from the intercom echoed through the chamber. Unidentified fleet. Detected. Closing fast. Marcus's blood ran cold. He had been on this station long enough to know that no fleets ever came here. It was a forgotten outpost, orbiting a dying star, of no value to anyone. He turned toward Elira, fear rising in his chest. It's them, isn't it? Whoever wrote these warnings, they're here. Elira's gaze was steady, but her eyes darkened with something Marcus had not seen before. Not fear, but readiness. Yes, they come for you, Marcus. Not for who you are, but for what you represent. Humanity. Marcus's hands shook as he gripped the edge of the console. The words of the ancient record echoed in his mind. The fragile ones should not endure, and now someone had come to make sure they didn't. The alarms echoed through every corridor of the station. Red light flashed along the walls, sharp and unrelenting like the heartbeat of something alive and afraid. Marcus Hale stood frozen for a moment, his breath shallow. He had lived on this station for months, always surrounded by silence. Now, the silence was gone, replaced by the warning of incoming death. Unidentified fleet detected, the intercom repeated. Estimated arrival, 10 minutes. Marcus turned sharply to Elira. Her face was calm, but her eyes reflected the crimson. Lights twin galaxies burning with quiet focus. You knew this would happen, Marcus said, his voice unsteady. Yes, Elira replied softly. They have been searching. And now, they have found us. Marcus's chest tightened. Who are they? The ones who fear you, she answered. The ones who believe humanity should not endure. They call themselves the Draki. Long ago they studied your kind and they decided you were dangerous. To them you are an anomaly that must be erased. Marcus staggered back. His stomach churned as though the floor had tilted beneath him. Dangerous? We're nothing compared to them. We don't have fleets like theirs. We don't have weapons that can tear stars apart. Elira stepped closer, her voice low but steady. That is exactly why they fear you. The strongest fall to pride. The fastest burn out. But humans, fragile, ordinary, continue, again and again. You endure where others break. To the Draki, that persistence is a threat greater than weapons. Marcus shook his head, gripping the edge of a console for balance. He was a historian, not a soldier. What could he possibly do against a fleet? The intercom broke in again. Hostile communication incoming. A holographic screen flared to life in the chamber. The image that appeared made Marcus's skin crawl. The Draki were tall, angular beings with pale, metallic skin that glistened like oil. Their eyes were sharp slits of red light, burning with contempt. A voice boomed through the channel, cold and sharp. Keeper Elira, you have broken the order. You shelter the anomaly. Elira straightened, her presence radiating calm authority. This human is under my protection. The Draki sneered. Humanity is a mistake of the cosmos. Fragile creatures that should have perished long ago. Their persistence threatens balance. We demand you surrender the one called Marcus Hale. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They knew his name. They weren't here for Elira. They were here for him. He whispered, Why me? Elira's voice was steady. Because you carry what they fear, the knowledge, the memory, the will to rise. They believe if they remove one voice, they can silence the story. The Draki commander leaned forward, his red eyes narrowing. Keeper, do not interfere. This is not your place. Humanity will be erased. The flame they carry will be extinguished. Marcus felt a jolt of confusion. The flame? He glanced at Elira, but she did not answer. Instead, she lifted her chin. The flame is not for you to decide. It belongs to them. The Draki hissed, their voices harsh. Then you choose defiance. So be it. We will tear your station apart. The screen vanished. The alarm changed pitch, sharper, louder. Marcus's heart pounded. They're going to kill us. Elira turned to him, her expression firm. No, they are going to test you. Marcus's. The Draki fleet floated like a wall of steel and shadows against the stars. Their ships glimmered with cold light, thousands of eyes staring into the silence of the void. The forgotten station trembled with each distant blast, its wounded hull groaning under the strain. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the command deck, his heart pounding in his chest. Every screen glowed with red warnings. Shield failures, broken systems, low power. Around him the crew worked with hands shaking from exhaustion, yet none of them abandoned their posts. On the main screen, the Draki commander appeared once more. His voice was cold and sharp, each word cutting like a blade. Human, you have delayed what is certain. You cannot win. You are weak. You are fragile. Surrender now, and we will end this quickly. Resist, and we will burn this station to ash. Marcus swallowed hard. His throat was dry, but his eyes did not waver. You call us weak, yet here we stand. You call us fragile, yet still we fight. You fear us not because of our weakness, but because you know we will not bow. The Draki commander hissed, his crimson eyes narrowing. You speak boldly for one so small, but bold words do not change truth. Humanity is a mistake, and mistakes are erased. The screen went dark. The silence left in its place was heavy, almost crushing. Elira stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the glass. They are not convinced yet, she said softly. They want to see if the flame burns as I told them it does. Marcus clenched his fists. And if it doesn't? Then this station will be nothing more than debris drifting in space, she replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed something deeper. Worry. Marcus drew in a deep breath and looked at the crew. Men and women, some young, some old, none trained for war, yet every face carried the same fire. They had chosen to fight, even when the outcome seemed certain. He felt something shift inside him, a weight lifted, replaced by a strange clarity. We've already proven who we are, he said quietly, almost to himself. But now we must show them. The station shuddered as another blast struck the outer hull. Sparks rained from the ceiling and the crew braced themselves. Marcus turned to Elira. You said they fear the flame. If that's true, then let's give them something to fear. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Now you understand. Patio. Plan of desperation. Marcus gathered the crew. The command deck buzzed with tired energy, but every eye turned to him. He was no general, no leader of armies, but at that moment he carried the weight of humanity's voice. They think we're weak because we don't have fleets like theirs, Marcus said. They think we're fragile because we bleed, because we break. But history shows the truth. Every time the universe expected us to fall, we rose again. Every time we lost, we rebuilt. Every time we were cornered, we found a way out. He pointed to the schematics glowing on the screen. We can't defeat them with strength, but we can outsmart them. They believe they know us, but they don't understand us. That's our weapon. The crew leaned in as he explained his plan. It was dangerous, reckless, and almost certain to fail, but it was also the only chance they had. The station's old engines, nearly useless for flight, still carried enough energy to trigger a massive burst. If redirected, that burst could blind the Draki sensors for a few precious minutes. In that window, Marcus planned to broadcast something. Not surrender, not silence, but the story of humanity. Let them see us, he said firmly, not as prey, not as mistakes, but as what we are. Survivors. The broadcast, as the Draki fleet charged weapons for their final strike. The station flickered with sudden light. A wave of energy burst from its engines, washing across space. Like a flare. The Draki ships staggered, their sensors blinded. In that moment, Marcus gave the command. Send it now. The crew activated the broadcast. Across the void, signals reached the Draki ships. Not codes, not threats, images. The face of Earth appeared on their screens, blue oceans and green continents spinning in the dark. Then came voices, millions of voices layered in harmony. Children laughing, elders telling stories, songs sung around fires, cries of triumph from victories long past. Scenes unfolded, humanity's first steps on the moon, the rebuilding of cities after disaster, explorers crossing oceans, families embracing after years apart, moments of joy, pain, and perseverance woven into a single tapestry of survival. Marcus's voice carried through the broadcast, steady and strong. You call us fragile, but fragility is not failure. You call us weak, but weakness does not mean surrender. We are human. We stumble, we bleed, we fall, but we rise again. Always. That is the flame you fear. That is why we endure. For a moment, silence filled the stars. Even the endless hum of warships seemed to quiet, as though the Draki themselves were listening. The Draki's response. The fleet stirred. The commander reappeared on the main screen, his face twisted with something Marcus had never seen before. Uncertainty. You. Show us memories, the Draki said, his voice sharper, almost strained. Why? What is this? Marcus met his gaze. It's what you've never understood. We are not strong because we crush others. We are strong because we never stop reaching for tomorrow. Destroy us here, and others will rise after us. Erase one, and another will take their place. You cannot erase what refuses to die. The commander's eyes flickered, his metallic face unreadable. Behind him, voices of other Draki could be heard, arguing, questioning. For the first time, their unity cracked. Illyra stepped forward. "You see now," she said, her voice calm. "The flame is real, and it burns brighter than your fear." The commander slammed a fist against his console, his voice trembling with rage. This changes nothing. You will burn." The screen cut off, but his hesitation had already betrayed him. The turning point. The Draki fleet prepared their final strike, but their movements were slower, less certain. Some ships drifted out of formation, their captains shaken by what they had seen. Marcus turned to the crew. "They're doubting. That's our opening." With Illyra's guidance, the humans redirected the station's remaining power into a concentrated pulse aimed at the weakest point of the Draki formation. The pulse wasn't enough to destroy ships, but it was enough to scatter them further, forcing them to retreat from perfect alignment. The station shook violently under return fire. Panels, bursting, systems failing, but still it held. And in the chaos, something remarkable happened. A single Draki ship broke formation entirely, not to attack, but to retreat. Then another, and another. The fleet, once united in purpose, now fractured. The Draki commander shouted across open channels demanding order, but doubt spread like wildfire. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart racing. "They're afraid." Illyra's eyes glowed faintly. "Yes. They've seen the flame and it unsettles them. They cannot understand it. And what cannot be understood is feared." The aftermath of fire. The battle did not end with a grand explosion or total victory. Instead, it ended with hesitation. The Draki commander, furious but shaken, gave a final command. "Fall back for now." One by one, the massive ships pulled away from the station, their lights fading into the endless black of space. The silence that followed was almost painful, as though the entire station held its breath. Then, at last, the alarms ceased. The red lights dimmed. Only the stars remained. Marcus sank into a chair, his body trembling with exhaustion. Around him, the crew cheered, cried, and embraced. They had survived. Illyra stood quietly at his side. "You see now, Marcus Hale. The flame is not just endurance. It is choice. You chose to fight not with destruction, but with truth. And that truth has shaken them more than any weapon could." Marcus looked at her, his chest still heavy but filled with something new. Hope. "We didn't win," he said softly. "No," Illyra agreed. "But neither did they. And sometimes survival itself is victory." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the sound of human voices around him. The crew, alive and unbroken, carried the proof he needed. Humanity was still here, and the Draki now knew they could not erase them so easily. The forgotten station drifted in silence. Its hull was scarred, blackened from fire, and cracked in more places than the engineers dared to count. Yet it still stood. Marcus Hale walked slowly through its corridors. The echoes of footsteps mixed with the faint hum of emergency systems that somehow clung to life. Everywhere he went, he saw faces, tired, bruised, but alive. People leaned against walls, helping each other walk, patching wounds with scraps of cloth. And when their eyes met his, they nodded. Some even smiled. He realized something then. They didn't look at him as a historian anymore. They looked at him as someone who had carried them through the storm. But Marcus didn't feel like a hero. Inside, his chest carried the weight of every scream, every loss, every strike that had nearly ended them all. He knew the Draki hadn't been defeated. They had only retreated, and they would return. The quiet. After the storm, Illyra found him standing, by a cracked viewport staring into the vast dark. She stepped silently, as she always did, until she stood beside him. Her eyes reflected the stars, but her presence felt heavier now, as though she carried her own silent burden. "They'll come back," Marcus said without looking at her. "Yes," Illyra answered softly. "The Draki do not forget, but neither do humans." Marcus let out a breath, his hand pressing against the cold glass. "We survived by chance. Next time, chance might not be on our side." Her voice was calm but steady. It was not chance. It was choice. And choices,